afterwards, so you all have a backup of this as well. So with that said, Dave, thanks in advance for everything, and we look forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Matt. Listen, that's awesome, and I always appreciate that introduction coming from Matt. Matt is the COO of Centercourt. We are in part 2 now of a 4-part series. So if you see me looking down at both sides, I got some notes. I tend to love to talk baseball, and I can get off track, and these notes will help me at least have some scheduled points that I want to hit on. But without going into this yet, I'd like to thank a couple of guys that have become friends over the years, college coaches from the area. Barry Davis from Rider University. I spoke to him at length today, just trying to catch up and get back into the loop of the whole recruiting process and his perspective and changes that have happened. I actually got off the phone and felt a little bit better than it's been for the last couple of years with the rule changes, the NCAA rule changes, and due to COVID and the logjam that it created for the high school players, particularly, I guess it would be the 2021 grads and the 2022 grads seem to be affected the most. It's looking like, I'm going to knock on wood, that if we don't have any further setbacks, that the 2023 class will start to get back to what resembles what we used to know as normal. I'm hopeful for that for all of the kids. So I want to give a little bit of credit here to Allie Morencio. Allie does a lot for Centercourt administratively, and she's behind the scenes, so you don't really hear anything about her. But after the first session that I did in January, which was talking about the how to make your winter training efficient, within hours she had smashed it down and compacted it and cleaned it up and put it on YouTube and sent that link out to everybody who registers for this. And I'm sure that everyone who registered for the first one was sent a link for this one. So that'll continue. I'm sure she'll put a link together and get it on YouTube. You could pass it along to anybody. I'm hoping to hit on some valuable information for you. I do things a little bit different. I'm not going to bore you to death with rules and regulations. It's not what I do. But what I can give you is some of the experience in the last 20 plus years of dealing with families and players going through this process. And maybe even more importantly, all of the conversations that I've had with coaches from all different levels, from JUCO right on up to Division I, and obviously even professional scouts. But also Johnny and John Reyna started the MACOs. I know that Matt correctly said this is not about this program. This is for everybody. But I do want to at least mention them. They brought the MACOs to Centercourt, and it's now the Centercourt MACOs. They founded that organization, and that's now expanded to all of the Centercourt. And then just want to mention the directors, Jimmy Mayer, a longtime friend, lifelong friend, basically, and teammate in high school and Little League. Director of baseball at Lawrence. You got Eddie Mejia as the director of baseball at Marlboro. And Lou Clemente is the director of baseball in North Jersey, a few facilities there. Really happy to be working side by side with this entire staff and their professionalism I've already talked about. So getting into this now, the way I'll do it is we'll hit on some subtopics. I'll discuss it a little bit, and then as kind of sort of a break in the middle, maybe about 25 minutes into it, I'll get fed a couple of questions and I'll answer those. And then I'll get back into some more topics, and at the end, I'll save time for questions. And as Matt said, it will be impossible for me to answer all the questions that people might have, but I'm not doing a whole lot these days. I'm living in Cape May and I have a lot of free time. I'm happy about that. And I have no problem if you just forward questions to any of the facilities, to any of those directors, and they'll get it to me. And if I don't have the answer, I'll do my best to find out that answer, and I'll contact you personally. Okay. Here's the advice. So there may be players on this call, there may be parents, there may be some coaches. The parents are always very good about giving their kids advice about how important academics are. And they are, and the parents are right. Probably, it's always been right, but maybe more now than ever. I was one of those kids that was so stuck on baseball as a kid that I don't know if I really heard that advice from my parents. I know they told me, I just don't remember if I ever really appreciated it or heard it. And I just want to, maybe kind of touch on that to the players themselves about, you might not be thinking about it from the right angle. Your parents are telling you, look, you have to have something to do with your life as an adult, and maybe a way to support yourself as well as your family. So they're giving you great advice. But even if you're thinking baseball, there are certain things that you're going to hear on the session tonight that the academic side of it becomes vital in you being recruited. Can open or close a lot of doors and beyond that. We'll touch on that in a subtopic a little bit later. The importance of having a guidance counselor at high school. So even, talking with Barry Davis today, it starts as soon as your freshman year. That relationship, I always believed, especially on this side of it, where, you're talking to families almost daily of high school kids and going through this process, that's what they're there to do. The guidance counselor is there to help students and help them move on to college. And I'm sure they want to. Anyone who has a job wants to be utilized. So don't hesitate to start up a relationship with a guidance counselor and have them set up a meeting and say, give them some idea of what your path is. And if you're already a junior or even a senior and you haven't established that, please do. It's common that you may not even know what your major is depending on the year that you are in. And that's okay too, because you'll still get some advice. But I asked Barry, I said, with all of the rule changes and SATs due to COVID were, stopped being taken. They stopped giving SATs and stopped counting. A lot of universities and colleges stopped counting on the SATs. So I said, what exactly are they doing now to decide whether a student or student athlete can get in academically? And he said they're relying for the most part on the transcripts, taking a look at the transcripts. And then of course the coach, if it's a player that's being recruited, the coach will take those transcripts down to admissions and they'll take a look at it. So your grades become very important, especially your core classes. And that's something, again, that's a conversation with your guidance counselor to make sure you're doing things right and you're taking the right courses and you're on a good path. You see so much nowadays, again, on the phone with Freddie and Barry for so long. And I was talking about the amount of anxiety that I'm seeing in the players of today and parents. And I know it's mostly social media driven. I got some good news for you. And having been involved in this from this side, running an organization and sitting and talking with parents, I mean, I didn't get into this for that reason. I really got into it for the baseball, teaching baseball. It just became like a sidebar. And I still believe with all of my heart that the most important thing that a player can do is focus on the two things that he can control. And that's your performance, both on the field and in the classroom. That's the most important thing that you can do. We already had talked about, your GPA and your transcripts are going to dictate a lot of times whether you can even attempt to get into a certain school or if that'll be blocked. So that's really important on that side. And then your performance on the field has to match what your goals are. And I think sometimes, you might go through years of playing this sport, parents and players, and never have somebody that is honest enough to tell you whether they think you have enough talent to play in certain conferences around the country. But I think if you nobody expects all parents out there and all players to be, strong, educated in this process, right? I mean, why would you be? It's not what you do. It'd be like asking me to fix somebody's car. I can't do it. In fact, I can't do much else other than talk about baseball, and that's a shame, but that's the truth. But you get my point. So it wouldn't make sense, right? Using common sense, it wouldn't make sense that if you're not dominating in your local area, and maybe starting in high school, Babe Ruth ages, 13 to 15-year-old, of course, into high school. If you're not dominating your high school, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say that you'd like to go to Vanderbilt or UNC, just really strong conferences, really strong programs. But yet I see it every year. I have requests from players and parents every year, put in a list of what you're looking at. And I read the list and I think, what is missing here? I can't believe it. And that's not trying to cut into somebody's dream. That's just the reality of sometimes you may not know the talent and the athletes that these schools are actually looking at on a daily basis and recruiting. So yeah, I would say reach for the stars, but you have to use some common sense and focus, like most of you already are. Focus on your performance on the field and in the classroom. And I think a lot of things will take care of themselves. You'll start, if you're a player and you're looking at a strong Division I, any Division I program really, for that matter, college and baseball, period. Because there's a lot of strength in schools that you would never imagine. A lot of Division III programs that can beat a Division I program. JUCOs have gotten stronger and stronger. Not all of them, but a lot of them. So to be able to play baseball in college is difficult in itself. All right. So, is the school an academic fit? Let's just hit on that for a little bit, and then we'll get to the baseball end of it. I want to hit on this because it's happened to me with some players in the past. I want to ask you a question. And I think sometimes athletes don't give themselves enough credit for what they have earned in the classroom. I was not a good student. I just wasn't. My current wife, my only wife, my wife, I went to high school with. She loved school. She loved it then. She still educates herself online in the dog grooming industry, but she's literally taking herself to school. She loves it. I regret that I did not enjoy it. But that's something, again, that is within your control. So the kids who have done really well in school, I'll give you an example, a quick story. I actually said this on the last call. So some of these stories will be intertwined depending on what the topic is. But a player who was accepted at Princeton University, and him and his father asked me during the game one day in travel ball playing Gallagher baseball, so-and-so, I won't use his name, was accepted at Princeton University, but we're not sure if he can play there. Do you think he should be looking elsewhere? And I started laughing. And then they both started laughing, and we all realized at the same time that was a dumb question. If you're accepted to Princeton, you go to Princeton. And I had actually called Scott Bradley and asked about the player, and he told me the truth. He always does. That's the conversations that we have, and that's what you need. You need honesty, right? And Scott said he's the type of player. He had success locally in Legion and high school, but he'll probably be one of those kids that goes to like the last day of tryouts, and it'll be depending on what I have, what shows up. Well, that's what happened. He went last day, he got cut. He played club ball there. I don't even know if they still have club ball, but they had a budget for it then, and they did it. And he did it for 1 year, and then realized that the academic workload was just it was too heavy for him to also play sport. Worked out fantastic for him. He's in a real good spot in his life right now. So my point to you is this: if you've done very well academically, I'm just saying you're going to do what you're going to do, and you're going to get advice from your parents, which is where it should come from. If I could give you any advice, I would say give yourself credit for doing that in the classroom, and let baseball be secondary in what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You'll know if it's okay if you want baseball to be a part of your college experience, but beg you to not give up what you've earned in the classroom, and maybe go to a school that is lesser known for its education just so you can play baseball. Wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and I hope it wouldn't make sense to your parents. Knowing your major, obviously. So when you're out there looking, now you can go online, you can do virtual tours online. You should get out to see campuses, a number of them, when you're going through this process. But if you do know what your major is, then obviously you can look up schools that have your major and can get you on the right path. I think that goes without saying. Consider that summer before you actually attend college. Consider doing maybe an online course. And I'm going to give Freddie Corella some credit for this. He said he has a lot of his players do that. And I thought that was an excellent idea because you don't really know how much time you're going to have when you're a dedicated athlete. You will make time, but you don't know what it's going to look like until you actually get there. So you might be able to lighten the load, so to speak, by taking some, maybe even one or even two online courses to get some credits and lighten your load of what you might have to take, especially in your first two semesters. So that might be something that you look into. And while I'm thinking about that, speaking mostly of JUCOs, but the courses that you take in general, having coached at a junior college, Mercer, for 3 years, there was times when players, they didn't really know that they would continue beyond the junior college. They didn't know what they wanted to do with their life, but they wanted to play a little more baseball. So they show up at a junior college and they take courses, not realizing that many courses are not transferable. The credits are not transferable. So they do it just to have enough credits to be eligible academically to play. And then they play and they don't realize, wow, I had some success and there's some 4-year schools that are asking the coach about me, but I can't go. I don't have enough credits to go. So they'd end up having to take another semester or sometimes another full year's worth of credits to have enough credits to move on to that 4-year program. But I don't remember ever seeing that work out even once, because the college that was interested in them is no longer interested. And they're now going a year where they're not playing, although the rules could allow them to do that now, the temporary rules. So think about that. Ask about, that's academic advisors. Even your coaches are so well versed in this now. Coach, can you help me out with these courses that I'm taking? I want them all to transfer to the 4-year program that I'm going to. And I don't think you can get it in writing, but the academic advisors typically know what programs what schools will accept those credits and which will not. Okay. A little bit of reality now, signs that you are being actively recruited. Because you can be tricked and you can be fooled, and sometimes it's designed to fool you. You get a letter in the mail that invites you to a camp, and sometimes a parent or a player thinks that they're being recruited by that school. And look, there might be some instances, very few, where you are actually being recruited by that school, but you would know it because it wouldn't just be a letter inviting you to a camp. If they are truly interested in you as a student athlete, they will come to see you play. They will talk to your coaches. They will ask about you. That's the reality of being recruited. Now, that being said, for all these years that I've done this, if I've had a player that I believe can play at a certain school in a certain conference, and they're sent one of those letters. I've had that happen so many times where a parent might say, Dave, we got a letter for so-and-so to go attend this camp. And I would say a lot of times, I think, your son can play there baseball wise. Is that a school that he's interested in? Because if he's not, it doesn't make sense to go there for the camp, right? But if it's a school he's interested in, lines up for everything that he's looking for in a school, then I do recommend attending a camp. But I always personally preceded that camp with a phone call to the coach that's running it about the player. And I would talk about the player and say, look, tell me what you think. He's coming to your camp on such and such a date. And then I would tell the player, introduce yourself and ask for an honest evaluation at the end of the camp. And I think you put a little heat on him. I don't think he's going to mind at all. And he is going to pay attention. And now that you've asked him for an honest evaluation, you have to be ready to hear an honest evaluation. There's nothing bad that can come from this. You attend the camp, you play poorly, or you play the best that you can. And he says, I like you. I like your attitude. I like your movements. You're athletic. You're fast. But I don't think you have enough skill to play in this conference. So I wouldn't be actively recruiting you. That's disappointing news. But you're leaving with an answer. Okay, there's the possibility that you perform well and it matches up. And it makes me look good because I kind of said, hey, I think he can help you. And then you go and you play good and he likes you. You got to see the campus. You've got to meet the coaches. Sometimes they'll take a few players on a tour after camp. So camp can be a good thing, but doing it blindly and as many as you can doesn't make a whole lot of sense and can be eventually can be very costly. So I highly recommend that you go with on a recommendation. Being recruited, actively recruiting also looks like this. I've had so many players over the years. I don't mind using this name. Coach also, St. John's was recruiting a player that I had. Now it's going back several years. He's playing professionally, Mike Salvatore. And St. John's saw Mike play a dozen times, no exaggeration, a dozen times in different venues. And they saw him have good games. They saw him have average games and they saw him have bad games and they loved him. And then when they realized they were going to actively recruit him, they called me and they asked me about him as a person. They knew what they needed to know by watching him, everything about him, how he took the field, how he went out to his position, how he reacted after striking out, how he looked as a teammate in the dugout. They needed to see all of that. Once they were satisfied with what they saw and that they wanted him, they called me to ask me what type of a person he was, what type of character he has. And boy, did I like that call because he is a high character kid. And it doesn't surprise me because his parents, I know them both, are the same way. That's why he is the way he is. They're really good people, good family. Now, can you imagine, as long as that school trusts me, and I'm giving that kind of an evaluation on a player, and they've already seen him play, he's golden. One issue, it really didn't work out academically, and he tried. It wasn't a lack of trying. They hired a tutor and all, it just didn't work out. So he ended up going to a junior college in the South, and then the path was good for him. It just had to go a different way. But that's being recruited, right? That's the way it's supposed to look like. It's not just one letter that could have been part of a mass mailing. I mean, nowadays, the kids, so many are probably listening right now, you attend a perfect game event or a PBR event or any number, a showcase, you're part of a mailing list. And those mailing lists get sold. Or they just get utilized in different ways time after time within that industry, right? So you may get invitations. Just be careful of what you think is recruiting. Right? Again, I would go back to using common sense. If you're not hearing from your local Division III schools, and they've had chances to see you several times, but you're not hearing from them, then you got to believe that a Division I school in a strong conference is not going to have interest. That's reality, right? Okay, let me do a couple of questions here. Well, this one we kind of just hit on. Our camps, this one came out earlier, I guess. Our camps and clinics at college is helpful. And yeah, we pretty much just hit that. I don't know if there's anything more that I can say about that, but again, I have utilized that, especially if it's out of state. Okay, you have a player who is strong, let's say, very strong. And yes, he has been dominant locally in high school baseball. He's shown signs against good arms in travel ball. So I'm painting a picture. How will he know whether he can take that talent out of state, maybe play ball in the South where everybody wants to play because warmer weather, right? Well, in that case, I've had those conversations with, college coaches in the South and even in the West. And I will talk honestly always about a player. And in that case, it may be helpful for the player to go to the camp, to go to one of their camps. And, hopefully it's an overnight or 2-dayer where they're going to get to see him do everything, hit, maybe in live game action. Now, the bottom line is you have to perform. So I'm not afraid to put my name out there on what I think I see, right? And sometimes the stars don't line up. So recommend a player. He goes to a college camp in a very strong program, and he does okay in batting practice. He runs a good 60, he fields the ball well, he gets in a game competition and doesn't fare too well. And then the school, I follow up with a phone call. School's not really interested. Well, that school is seeing a lot of kids, a lot of talent. And so sometimes it's not fair. That's the truth. This game is not fair. I've lived the life. And I would always tell my kids, life isn't fair and baseball might be worse. So sometimes you just have to be able to look over. And today there are coaches here to see the whole team or to see me. And today is the day I got to do it. You got to find it somewhere, somehow, and you have to do it today. And if you don't, you're going to be disappointed on the car ride home. It is what it is. There's not anything that anybody can say to you. And that's what I mean. But if you do it enough times, eventually you might one day look over there and they're there, people are there to see you, and you are the best player of the day. I've done it on both ends. I remember a Mets tryout. I was thrilled to be there, and I stunk. It was raining, so we hit off a machine underneath the stadium, and the players were feeding the machine to each other. The goal was for you to look better than everybody. So the guy that was feeding me was hiding the ball, and I couldn't get my rhythm with my stride. He was like hiding it behind the wheel, and I'd step, and then he put it in, boom, and I was terrible. I thought I ruined my chances. But there was another time in a JUCO All-Star game where I think every team was represented, Major League Scouts, and I went 6 for 7 in a doubleheader. I just decided today's going to be my day. So I'm not saying it can be done like that. My point is, that's how these things happen. You can't constantly fail in front of college coaches. You might have had a dozen different opportunities and you constantly are failing. You can't just say, well, I don't know why they don't like me. I'm a good player. At some point you have to perform. Anybody that's like me can talk about you, talk about what we see, but you actually have to do it at some point. I'll give you an example. Love the player. I love the family. And, there's a player that went to a camp at Duke. And I knew that was a reach, but he was a talented, very athletic and very talented kid. Just to show you how players are assessed. And he went, did the whole thing, live at bats, threw off the mound, did some defensive work. And I followed up with the coach of St. John's a few days later. He picked up the phone, we talked, and I asked about the player. And he said, well, he didn't really stand out. And I said, can you explain a little bit more? And I want you to hear this. So he said, Dave, well, he got into an at-bat, a 1-0 count against the pitcher who wasn't overpowering. Not in our conference, he wouldn't be considered overpowering. 1-0 count. and he flew out to like medium depth left center. He was a left-handed hitter. I understood exactly what he was saying. You may not understand what he's saying right there, but I'm going to explain it to you. You're trying to make an impression at a big program, big time program in Duke, right? You're trying to stand out. You get a 1-0 fastball and you're late and you're not attacking. Like if you yak that thing foul down the pull side, that's showing that you want to stand out. And if you're nervous, I understand, I do. But if you're nervous in a tryout, in a camp, what do you think it's going to be like in a conference weekend series with a huge crowd there? So that's reality. I'm trying to give you reality at a time where you can do something about it and know what you're involved in, what you're training for, and what you're looking at going forward in this recruiting world. Okay, one more question. I'll move on to other topics. What do you think of recruiting services? So, I'm not here to bash any industry or any person, anybody that's making a living in any way. I'm not going to bash. But again, I would say to all of you, make sure that that recruiting service makes sense to you. So do they have experience? I mean, they're going to be costly. Is that money that you have as a family that you can put out there? I will tell you, I don't think they're 100% necessary. I think the first two categories I gave you are more important than anything else. And that's your performance on the field and your performance in the classroom. If your performance on the field is through the roof good, and you're a good student, solid student, you're not going to need a recruiting service because everybody around you will do the hype for you. You know what I mean? Like your local college coaches, your local high school coaches, these guys know each other. You know, sometimes they have breakfast places where they meet and they talk about the high school players coming up. They do camps together. They know who's talented in the state. And, you know, so the recruiting service can take a lot of your money, and then they'll take a video of you and it can send it out to, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of schools, of which maybe very few of them are really a good fit for you. I can tell you, for all the years that I did Gallagher baseball, people that were signing up for those recruiting services, the schools that they would send a video to would also, that recruiting service would also list me as a reference for that player. And the school would then do what? They would call me and ask me about the player. Well, I do that anyway. And if you notice, this is free. It always has been for me. Like I said, I didn't get into this because I was good at college recruiting and the placement of players. I didn't get into it for that. Really, all I did over the years is tell the truth about a player and tell the player and his family the truth. There's too many people in this industry, and this is a fact, that will tell you as a parent, oh, you want me to talk to North Carolina for you? Sure, I'll call for you. And they call and they tell the coach, you know, this family wants me to call. Look, he can't play for you. So, but just, I told them that I was going to call you. Just do me a favor. If they ever reach out to you by email, just say that you've already recruited that position, or academically he's not. And I know this because college coaches have told me that this is done. So I don't think you need that. I think you need someone who's going to be honest with you, someone who knows how to assess talent, somebody who knows the strength of the schools and the conferences and is going to be honest. And then beyond that, one of the hardest things to do is figure out the athlete himself. How much inner drive does he have? I told Barry Davis this morning. I said, whenever I'm going to put my name on a player that's going to an advanced level, I already know his skill set. So if I believe that his skill set will work, the first thing that I ask myself is, what will he do when he faces failure? Because he is going to fail. We all do. I failed every level I've ever played. I just failed more as the levels went up. pitching got better, defense got better. I had success at every level too, but I had failure at every level. And my response to the failure was always what I was most proud of. I'm not in the Hall of Fame. I'm never going to be considered for it. And as a career, it was hard. It was very hard. But I am proud that I did the grind, that my answer to failure and adversity was always, I'll go early tomorrow. So that's always been like the biggest thing for me when I'm talking about a player and putting my stamp on a player, is when he fails, because he will, when he starts to question his own ability and if he can hang with these other players, will he push through that, or will he be calling his parents and saying, I want to transfer? And, that's another topic for another day. I think that's the next topic, but it happens in travel ball all the time. If it's not working out for a player, he's not batting in the right spot in the order, or he's not starting, we'll just move him to another organization. But that doesn't change you as a player. You're still the same player if you bounce. The answer probably needs to be, no. You stay right here and you prove that that is your spot, or that you want to hit there in the order. I've had that question from my own kids. Now, I don't know why I'm batting seventh. I had 2 hits yesterday. Well, if you want to bat second or third or whatever you want to bat, then you got to make it so that coach starts to write your name in that spot. I don't know any other way to do it than to prove it on the field. That to me was always the answer, because anything else to me, I always say that weakens the resolve of the athlete. When you give them an out, a plan B, that's in the back of their head. It's just too easy. All right. What caused the difficulty in recruiting for the 2020 and the 2021 high school grads? So many things. The transfer portal that was typically 300 players per year jumped up to, I think it was well over 1,300, probably approached a much higher number than that. So many kids were putting their names in that transfer portal. When the NCAA changed the rule that you didn't have to sit out when you transferred from a Division I to another Division I, that opened up doors. Can you imagine? Boy, you're going to talk about relying on integrity. You're a third base coach and you're standing down next to another team's third baseman the entire game, and your third baseman's struggling and he's batting eighth. I don't know. You'd hope that coach won't say anything. He has integrity, but does he say something like, why are you batting eighth for these guys? I don't even know what has happened out there. I know there's some college coaches coach summer ball, and they coach players from other schools. Imagine going out for breakfast or lunch, or just talking to them while they're stretching, and just kind of floating out the idea of maybe you'd be better off with us. I mean, I hate to think all of the things that happen. Players recruiting other players, friends that they knew from back home that aren't getting as much playing time. So if you were a college coach in the last 2 recruiting classes and you had an opportunity to go through the transfer portal and get a kid that is physically mature, has a resume of playing against college pitching in whatever conference, as opposed to taking a kid coming out of high school that you're projecting, he looks like he's going to be good, but we don't really know. He just looks good. So what was happening? And I know as I was on the other end, I was on the phone, and a school might show an interest in a player that I had that I believe was, a strong player, Division I player. And 3 weeks later, that interest was gone. And I started to figure out like what they were doing is, yeah, we have interest, but they're still waiting to see if the kid or the 5 kids they're talking to coming out of that transfer portal are going to commit to them. Not the coach's fault, right? That's the rules that they were given. That was the lay of the land. So, and it was bad. I know for a fact there were several players that I believe were, good, strong Division I talents that went to Division III. And Division III programs that they went to are good programs with good people running them. That I was happy about. And I made them understand, if you go there thinking, feeling sorry for yourself, you're going to wet the bed when you get there because it's going to eat you alive. It's college baseball and it's highly competitive. You will fail miserably if that's your attitude. It just, you know, it was a different world. And as I said, when we first came on, I think that it's about to turn for the better. I think there's a log jam still of the kids that were repeating their grades, red shirts, so that the kids that went from this last graduating class, the 2021s and the 2022s grad years, I think still might feel some of that log jam. They still might be asked to redshirt when typically they would at least be on the roster, or they won't play much when typically they would maybe have gotten an opportunity, but a kid is still there that was supposed to be gone. By 2023, again, if everything works out and there's no setbacks, then I think you'll start to see, you know, it change back to a normal recruiting atmosphere. While we're kind of on that, and you're talking a little bit about how, you know, what comes into, you know, making a decision. I've said this to so many people, but I'm a big believer in it. Nobody can measure your heart. Nobody knows what's inside of your mind. Is how much challenge do you want? Is challenge what you want? How unfair it can be. I played in the major leagues for 9 years. I had a teammate. I don't think he would mind me telling this because he told me, Darryl Boston, loved the guy. I was a teammate of his in Chicago on the White Sox and then again for the Mets. And we were similar. Left-handed hitter, I was right-handed hitter, but our roles were similar. I was an everyday player for about the first 4 or 5 years of my career. Then I became a role player. He was a role player. In fact, we platooned 2 different times on 2 different teams. I'd face lefties, he'd face righties. But when they put him in, like 6'3", waist was probably like a 30. I mean, strong, fast, hit for power, played the hell out of the outfield defense. And somebody would get hurt. Darryl would be all of a sudden inserted in there as a everyday player for a week or 10 days and would just go off. I've seen him do this a few times. And everybody would say, he's got to play every day. You know, I mean, type of guy to steal 3 bases in a game, hit 2 home runs and another one the next day, and make a diving play in the outfield. All of a sudden, he's playing every day. Somebody gets pushed out of their starting role. And then Darryl seemed to like back off. And I said that to him one day. I said, I've seen this happen with you. You seem to prefer to be in a role player's role. And I was not ready for his answer because I wanted to start. I always fought to start. I know I need to get on that field or I'm getting closer to being done and not, you know, being cut, released. But he said to me, you know what, Gally, I just like to, you know, make good money, travel, stay in nice hotels, wear good clothes. And then I thought, so what's wrong with that? Because that's not my mentality doesn't make it wrong. Does everybody have to be that ultra competitive? No. So as far as all of you that are out there, player wise, and parents that have a kid, like, I think that's important information to know. Does your son really want the grind? Does he want the challenge? Or is he better off in a smaller school where he plays all 4 years that he's there getting a great education and his degree and enjoying himself? I don't know the answer to that. I just know that I tried to implement that mentality on a family years ago and it was wrong, and I'll never do it again. I think that's something that the individual athlete has to figure out with the guidance of his parents, a sit down, a talk, because we all know in order to play at a high level at maybe the school that you're wishing to play at, it takes a lot of dedication, a lot of commitment, a lot of work. Let's see. Okay, a few things that maybe you've heard, maybe you haven't. As far as making your decision when that time comes. A very large percentage, don't have the number, the actual number in front of me. I know, I remember reading this years ago, but a very large percentage of college rosters are filled with players who are within 150 miles, live within 150 miles of campus. And if you raise that to 300 miles, it's even larger. Now, that's not straight across. It's not a rule, right? So there might be some schools that any given year recruit a lot of kids from out of state, but that makes sense to me, right? That makes sense to me. So we are here. We're in the Northeast. If you think about the time your son played Little League Baseball till, the leagues that he goes through, attends summer camps, who sees him? Local coaches see him. Local coaches have conversations. And then all of a sudden he's playing high school ball, he's playing Legion ball, he's playing travel ball, and the local schools are sending coaches out to see him play in competitive games. So they get to see him so many times. Doesn't that now start to make sense as to why a lot of rosters are filled with kids that are within a certain distance from the school? Because it's convenient for those coaches to see them, sometimes even watch them grow up and have a very strong opinion and probably be spot on as to whether that player can play for them or not. Just something to keep in mind. Maybe asking yourself some of the things that you would look into, the location of the campus. Some kids over the years have told me that I don't want to be that far from home. I want to be able to come home on weekends. I want to, be able to have dinner with my family, whatever, get laundry done, whatever the case may be. There are some kids that don't want to go far away from home. And then there are others, and it has nothing to do with whether or not they love their parents. Others just want to get away, right? They've been home and they want to get away. They want to grow up. They want to, I guess, live their own life. So that's always a consideration. I know parents and kids really should be also concerned about the safety of the campus. That's where visits come in. Lining the school up with your major. We talked a little bit about that. And then also the reputation of the coach and the staff as far as development. I don't know too many coaches that are bad at development. I do know a lot of players who, when they don't make a team or they're not starting, will call me and say, "Yeah, coach, you didn't coach me up." I never accept that. I'm not a fool. That's done in the major leagues too. A major leaguer has a bad year as a pitcher, and what does he say when somebody asks him about his pitching coach when he's traded? Well, yeah, let's just say we didn't get along, or I don't think he helped me that much. What? You have the ball in your hand or the bat in your hand. It isn't the coach's fault ever. That's an easy way out, that kind of response. I know for me, I never accept that. But that's what I think you want to find out. You want to have some level of comfortability with the coach and the coaching staff. I will tell you, you will never see the true personality of a coach when you're being recruited. And that includes me. And it isn't a bad thing. It's just when I'm talking to a kid and his parents about him possibly coming to the program, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to bring up all the negative things. There's always going to be something negative. I wouldn't go out of my way to bring that up. But I've been told, I've always thought I was very mild-mannered, but my own wife has told me, the trainer I remember at Mercer County College also had said to me, and players have told me, that they can't be in the dugout when I am coaching. And I'm like, why? I don't understand why. I'm not a screamer. And they always said that I was too intense, made them nervous. I'm pacing, I'm back and forth, I'm standing, I'm looking out at the field. But that was always because I was trying to figure out, all right, here's who's coming up next inning. We're down by a run. Do I want to pinch hit for him? Do I want to bunt if he gets on? Like, I always had the wheels turning. That's just the level of intensity. So, sometimes if it's good for an athlete to figure out, maybe ask questions of other players who've been there and graduated, or they're still there, to ask about, their feelings of the coach and what would be your level of comfortability. I can tell you this of what not to say. This is just my opinion. I've had players over the years say to me, "Dave, what do you think? Should I ask him? I noticed he has 3 catchers that he recruited in the same class that I am." And my answer is, look, you're talking to a very strong program. If you're worried about who else is there, you got to look somewhere else. you got to lower the bar, because if you want to play at that level, they're going to have to back you up. That's got to be your mentality. Otherwise, don't look at that level. I'm not sure what level you should look at if you're worried about somebody else playing your position because you think he's better than you, or you don't even know. You haven't even met him. You need to have a little bit of anxiety and fear about whether you'll play or not. That'll help you work hard when no one's watching. But that was never a problem for me. I just felt like, no, I'm going to go play center field there. And it is what it is. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. But that was always my mentality. But you really do have to have that conversation with your sons about where their head is at for all of this. It'll help you choose what level you want to choose. Okay. Packaging. The time always goes by pretty fast. So I'm going to touch on packaging. Packaging is simply like, it's important from a recruiting standpoint. So you have like a few different arms. You have your financial aid, and that's obviously, that's a need-based. You'll fill out forms and you'll send them in, and the school will determine whether you get any help financially based on a lot of things that are going on at home. You have your academic money, which I think is probably got to be most important for you, because the world that I've been living with here in this recruiting world, there's much more money that goes out academically to the kids that I've dealt with over the years than athletically. There is money that goes out athletically, but it's a select few players that get it. You've got to be really good and not just giving it away, right? They're forming teams, and they only have so many, if they're fully funded, so much scholarship money to give out. So now think of it like this. Think of it as if you were the college coach trying to build a program year to year, and you have X amount of scholarship money to give out. And we have this kid, Dave Gallagher. And when I look at everything, he's getting a little financial aid. He's really bright. I probably should have used somebody else as an example. That'll never happen. But he's really bright, and he's earned himself $20,000 in academic money. So now we got a little bit financial aid, you got some academic money, and I'm trying to get this number of what it's going to cost him annually, his parents, or loan for him. I'm trying to work that down. Maybe I can give him the minimum 25%, but that's packaging with the academic money and the financial aid. Look at how you've now become more valuable than the player who gets no financial aid, and he hasn't earned any academic money, but he wants to come to your school, and you want him, but he's similar in talent than the other guy that I can get for 25%. That now leaves me as a coach more scholarship money to offer to other players. He's happy because of the packaging. Who cares where the money's coming from? But it helps me to get him. I might even take him over someone who's more talented that I have to get with a bigger scholarship, because it weakens the rest of my map as to who I can bring in and offer money. So you now understand that. I think that's a great way of looking at everything, and at a time where hopefully most of you can do something about it. So you remember at the beginning of this call, I talked about how important the academics were, even if it's not what your parents will tell you. Having something to fall back on and make your way through life. If you're only thinking baseball, think of that part of it. How you become more attractive as a student athlete by packaging of a coach, enabling him to put a package together and use more money in a different direction to help make that entire team better. Let's see here, a couple more things here. Parents' role is diminished greatly. I mean, I knew this, but even when I coached 3 years in college, that is chopped off. Like the relationship talking to parents stops. The players are told right up front in the freshman year, I'm dealing with you now. If you have any issues, you come to me. Please don't tell your parents to call me. That won't happen. It can't happen. It won't happen. And in fact, I'll give you a quick story, how things change quickly. I came out of professional ball for 19 years, I believe, total, minor league and major league. And then I go and I'm coaching at Notre Dame High School. And then I did that for 1 year, and then I went to Mercer. So I'm coaching at Mercer, and I noticed like first couple of days of practice, players were coming up to me and say, hey, so-and-so can't make it. Fell on a skateboard. He scraped up his knee or twisted his knee. And I'd say, he's not coming to practice? No. Did he go to the trainer? Did he go to a doctor? I don't know. He just told me to tell you that. Well, that got me. I held a team meeting quickly, and they all came in. They had no idea what it was about. And the kid who didn't show up and told a teammate to tell me the day before, he was a transfer from Rutgers. And I started the meeting, and then I looked at him and I said his name, and I said, let me ask you a question. Would you have done that to Freddie Hill when Freddie was at Rutgers? Would you have sent another player in to tell Freddie you were not going to be able to make it to practice? And he was embarrassed, the kid. He felt shame, I guess. He sat up in his chair and he said, no. And I said, so what you're telling me is you respect Freddie more than me. And he turned all colors of red. And I said, so here's the deal. That will never happen again. I said, I don't want anyone to tell me if you're not going to be at practice, because if you're not going to be at practice, I will know something really bad has happened to you or someone in your family. I don't want that to happen. So there will never again be anyone who comes up to me and says that another player will not make practice. So I said, if you're sick, you come in and you go to the trainer, and the trainer will look you over and tell you, probably tell me, so-and-so is sick. There's no sense he's not going to be able to get anything done. If you have a cold, they might say, you might want to keep him out of activities, but I would like to have him out there in the dugout listening to what we're doing. My point is this: you're grown men. Your parents are out of the equation until the game is over, unless there's some kind of an emergency. Even when you go on a visit, I've done this with my 5 children, right? I always say, if you're going to sit there and the coach is asking your son questions, I always set my chair back a good 2 or 3 feet. I'm not answering these questions. It's going to be my son. That's who the coach is asking the questions. Or don't even go in the office, right? So you don't have to listen to me. I'm trying to just give experience of what the coaches feel, what they would prefer. Okay, let's see. Okay. It looks like I'll squeeze in another 1 or 2 questions here. I'm not in any rush, but can an offer be pulled? I like that question. Can an offer be pulled? Okay. I had to wet my lips for this answer. So I don't think there's a person in the world that believes in early commitments, the unofficial commitments. I don't think on either side, coaches or players. Maybe I shouldn't say that, because I think sometimes the players get caught up in bragging rights, and some parents do too. But the question is, can an offer be pulled? Well, schools have reputations. Most coaches, like any walk in life, most coaches have integrity. I'm sure there's some, I can't name any, and I don't want to name any, that don't. But most that I've ever dealt with and have become friendly with over the years have integrity. So I'm not going to point a finger at them that they should have to stand by a commitment. Now, so let's say you're between your freshman and sophomore years, and you are offered a generous offer from a program that you're thrilled to say yes, and you put it all over social media that you are proud to announce that you have committed to such and such a school. Let's say you're a pitcher that's throwing 85 to 86, and you haven't even started your sophomore year, and you're lanky build, your fingers are long, ball comes out of your hand real good. You're projectable is what it's called. So it's easy for a coach to project by looking at you. Oh, he's 85, 86 right now. He still has 3 more years of high school baseball to mature and grow and learn. He's probably going to be mid to high 90s by the time I get him on campus. Well, life is life. Injuries, just setbacks, whatever the reason. That same player, I'm not saying anything that's not realistic. That same player as a junior is still around the same velocity. In fact, there's days when he's lower. So he's now 83 to 85, topping out at 86 once in a while. He's a junior. And when the school was interacting almost weekly leading up to the commitment, all of a sudden there's no interaction. There's no emails. There's no message to call them. And you're wondering, like, what is going on here? I don't know if I blame the school. You know, they thought they were getting something and now they're not getting it. So when you finally do get in touch with them, they may say something along the lines of, well, look, you'd have to admit, you know, when we made that offer to you, you were throwing 85, 86, you're still there. In fact, you're less than that. You know, look, we'll honor this. We have a reputation to withhold. We will honor this, but you have to understand, we're going out and recruiting 3 or 4 top starters. You're probably not going to sniff an important inning. Now the player is dejected. He's going to talk with his parents and he wants to transfer. But see, that's the point. So the best thing I'd ever heard, you know, coaches taking a stab at how it could be better. One college coach said, I'd like to see it where all offers are official, no matter when they are given. They're official. That means the school is locked into it. The player's locked in too, but the school is locked in. So they will probably take a little longer to make sure that this offer is right, and that the kid does mature and develop the way they had hoped. That's probably the most sensible way to do it, but it's not my rule. I can't change it. It also can happen with players. Say you are a position player that was offered 60%. You were very highly recruited, your starter as a freshman, and you just flop. You bat 220, you don't drive in many runs. You did okay on defense, but they just thought they were getting a lot more out of you. Maybe, you know, college pitching in this conference is eating you alive. And you were able to crush high school pitching, but not so much with college. And now you have your end of the year exit meeting. It's just you. It's not you and your parents. It's not you and 5 teammates. It's you and the coaching staff. And you might hear, this is a reality. Well, look, we thought we were getting a player that was going to hit the middle of the lineup for us. That's what we recruited. That's the offer that we made. You'd have to admit that's not what we got. You know, like, I'm not telling you that we're going to pull the offer. We'll honor it. But you need to know that we're now going to recruit as a top recruit, positional recruit, a third baseman, and he's going to have every opportunity to come in here. You're probably not going to play much if you stay. But if you do transfer, let me know. I'll you can use me as a recommendation. Is that wrong by the coach? That's up for you to decide. I don't know if that's wrong. I guess, I mean, that's pro ball. That's professional baseball. You're not given anything unless you can get a 5-year guaranteed deal and you're locked in no matter how you play. I never got one of those, but that was professional ball for me. 1-year contracts, make the team in spring training every year, and then play hard to stay. The second you're not performing, they got hundreds of guys that are training to take your spot. So, you know, I'm not saying that to scare you. I'm just saying that's the reality of what is out there. You know, I guess another way to look at it is, you know, how much can you count on? Let's say you're being recruited by, you're doing really well in high school. You're being recruited by a dozen schools, one level or another. And it could be Division 3s, Division 2s, Division 1s, some JUCOs, but you're hearing from a lot of different people. You've had some official visits. In your mind, you think you know where you want to go. You have your top 3. And let's say you got offers from the top 3, but you haven't pulled the trigger on your end. You know, how long do you expect them to hold that offer and honor it? Well, in fairness to them, I think the second that you don't accept it, that it's fair for them to pull it. They got to take care of themselves. I think that's the healthiest way for you to look at it. Somebody comes along, they've made you offer, you don't pull the trigger. You have every right to not pull the trigger. Maybe you just want to give it more time and visit more schools. Well, you just got to know that that's the risk that you're taking. It might not even be a risk. It's just the reality of, look, I get to go through this process one time, and I'm going to take my time with it. So just understand from both sides. I always look at things, try to look at things through the eyes of both sides. So hopefully this has been helpful for you guys. Couple of final comments. Showcases to me, they can be helpful. They can also be expensive. The high academic ones, wow, the day jump, right? They have value because the college coach, you have to fill out forms so they know that the kids that are at those camps typically have the academics to get into their school. So they're out there not wondering. A lot of times, like those Ivy Leagues and Patriot Leagues schools, they attend a camp and they see a lot of talent that they like, but there might only be 5, 6, 7% of the kids that are there that can get into their schools. It could be a lot of wasted time. So the high academic ones are helpful for those coaches. A lot of times they work those events so that they can see the players. Boy, they're heavy though. I want to say they're $500 or $1,000. So yeah, there's value to them. I have been in the last couple of years, started with the pandemic. I'm a big believer in live stream events. I think it can be helpful in a lot of ways. It can be a spark. It can show your skill set. It can be watched. They're typically archived, so a college coach can watch it live, or he can, be sent that link and watch it. And you're looking to spark an interest. If he likes what he sees, you hope, now that we're, again, I'll knock on wood, clearing the time where a coach couldn't come out to see you, now they can. So maybe they see you in a live stream event and then set up, a schedule, a time where they're going to see you in a game. They do want to see you compete. And the better the arm you're facing as a position player, or the better the hitters you're facing as a pitcher, if it matches the level of their conference, that's helpful to them. So I definitely am a big believer in them. We do have a live stream in case there's any kids that are, this is not a self-serving, webinar, but I do know on March 5th, we have a BFA. They're really good guys. I talked with them for the last couple of years. They've done several events, and I actually talk when I'm at the events. They give me an open mic. The one thing I'm good at is, assessing talent. It's just, I like it, I enjoy it. I know what I'm looking at. And sometimes it's just the way a guy swings, the way a guy runs, the way he takes the field. My eyes have always been attracted to the athleticism of a player. So when I say the way he takes his position, I'm not talking about a sprint. I'm not even talking about hustle. I'm talking about the way he moves. His body movement, the way his strides are, his athleticism, and that typically gets me to want to see more. Let me watch him in the field, between innings even. If he's an infielder, I want to see his hands. I want to see him throw across the diamond. You guys, you players, you have to understand that. I spoke about Barry. I thanked him, Barry Davis, years ago. I really respect the man. I hope he respects me. I think he does. But I told him he needed 2 outfielders, at least one, maybe 2. And I've always liked the way he runs his program. I've been out there. I've watched him. He takes every minute is useful in developing your kids. So he says, I need outfielders. I said, I have a couple of them. And we had game at Diamond Nation. I was actually where I'm at now. I was in Cape May, and he called me, and he said, if it wasn't you, I wouldn't have called. If it was anybody else from another organization, I simply would have left and gone home. Because it's you, I'm calling you. 2 outfielders that you gave me. One was playing center, one was playing right. Between innings, they were throwing knuckleballs to each other, clowning around. Well, that aggravated me. And the problem is these 2 kids were really good kids, and they were really good players. But that was the impression. They had no idea that Barry was there to watch them. And they probably didn't think they were doing anything wrong. But if you put yourself in the coach's position and you get this glimpse of a player that was recommended, I put my name on. And I'm not going to lie, I aired him out. And I told both of the players that story. They were very dejected to hear it. And I said, look, it probably won't be the last opportunity you get, but that's how life can be, is that, why would you choose to throw knuckleballs in the outfield? Was it because you didn't think anyone was there to watch you? Does that mean you will only put out an effort when someone is there to watch you? That's not going to work. That's not going to work long run anyway. All right. Look, I guess I went over, I always do, but I appreciate everybody that did listen in. And like I said, Allie, I'm sure will put this on a YouTube link and send it out to all of you who are registered. The next topic, it will come up in February. We haven't picked the date, but it's how does a coach assess me? So there will be a lot to talk about there, and what the coach is looking for in a player, all the different roles a player can play to help a team win and be attractive to a college coach that's recruiting. So you guys have a great night. Thanks for checking in. And I'm a huge Chiefs fan, so I want you to pull for the Chiefs this weekend against Buffalo. Well, it's going to be a tough one. And I apologize to all you Eagles fans out there, but that was rough to watch. All right, have a good night, everybody. Take care.